And the time is 8:32. Welcome, everyone. And Mr. Rugg, I understand you have some opening remarks.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
So, good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Chris Rugg, Executive Director of the Community Redevelopment Agency. So, I appreciate you all firing up a Monday morning here early with us. We typically haven't done CRA work sessions in the past, but I think these are prudent moving forward, and I would like to do these a little bit more frequently, just because we have a lot of projects that will probably need direction from this board moving forward. And then there's a tremendous amount of projects that we're actually doing, and it's also to keep you all apprised and updated on the status of all those projects and how they all work together. And then lastly, the CRA goes through phases where they ebb and flow with planning and project execution. So right now we are doing quite a bit of project execution, but as we start entering, I think, another phase of planning that really is in line with the discussions that I have with the mayor on a regular basis about creating a community of opportunity for all. Those planning projects are going to need your input and your guidance as we start moving forward with those. So today we have three presentations. We have one with Dr. Nguyen, 314 Clematis Street, and then finally the very exciting West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology. And you know, they center around the community and the CRA's. Dr. Nguyen's presentation really centers around the community and the understanding of it. The 314 is really an economic development initiative focusing on our small businesses. And then lastly, the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology is our place-based workforce development that really strikes at the heart of that poverty rate and creating some wealth building in our communities for our poorest residents, but also provides the talent for our local businesses. So very exciting. It's sort of a taste of a lot of different things that we're doing across the board, and I'm very excited about that. So the first presentation is Dr. Nguyen. She brings, many of you know her, she brings an anthropological approach to many of our projects. From the Sunset Lounge, which has been one of our marquee projects, all the way down to the simplest things like street signs. She's a wealth of knowledge and insight that has helped guide the CRA with its neighborhood relationship building. And I've asked her to provide an update to you all for her work because it is so critical to the ongoing success of the CRA's mission. So with that, Dr. Nguyen.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all. Good morning to you, Mayor and Commissioners, as well as City Attorney. It's a privilege to be here because as an anthropologist, people don't tend to put anthropology with a lot of city government. So it has been a very interesting experience, but I value the opportunity to do so. And so just to give you a brief background or even a refresher for those who probably already know and just who I am and what I do, I am the founder and owner of Consider the Culture. I'm an applied cultural anthropologist. And anthropology is the study of human beings throughout time and places, but there are four subfields. There's cultural, there's linguistics, there's physical or biological, and then there is archaeology. And I'm an applied cultural anthropologist, which means I use anthropology to solve contemporary problems and whatever that might be. I have a specific interest in area of research in looking at historical African-American insurance companies and their role in the civil rights movement, as well as race, place, heritage in historic communities, as well as identity. Those are my focuses in the research I've done. So how I incorporate my field of study in a larger city government or larger institutions, I incorporate anthropological knowledge in governmental, community, educational, and religious institutions covering a variety of topics with specifically, with race and identity. And so I just wanted to give you a brief background about that, and then of how I even got involved in this for the past 4 years within the CRA. Now, just from my understanding in the CRA goals of collaborating with for redevelopment in connection to stakeholders and residences and businesses and all these different factors where you look at economic development and affordable housing and even historic preservation. And so in 2016 of July, I was approached by the previous CRA director, Mr. John Ward. I was volunteering at the 1928 Storm Coalition, which before I even got involved with the CRA, I was working and collaborating with heritage organizations, the African American Research Library and Cultural Center, as well as the Storm of 28. Mr. Ward said, I'm not sure all what you do, but we seem like we need a person like you on our team. I didn't know much about CRAs. I said, well, let me give it a try, specifically when I found out that the focus was the historic Northwest and my family ties. My great-grandparents, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, and my parents lived and grew up in the historic Northwest. On the 900 block on 8th Street in Tamron, my family on my wind side, on my father's side, the family built and lived in those homes, and the homes between 7th and 8th Street on Tamron, they built those homes as well. Also, I am the great niece of Alice Frederick Mickens, in which my mother was named after her, who many of you know who she is in the home, the historic home, and all the civic engagements that she has done. So as you can see, there's a personal interest, and that's why I got involved in this project. Not sure exactly how and my role would play. However, that was expressed to me what the role would be. And so just briefly, I was hired and tasked to be a part of a team of the historic North Rising Project. And the goal was to preserve community history, conduct ethnographic research, in which I'll talk a little bit about that in a little while, translate revitalization plans, identify potential impacts and needs within the community, develop ideas to preserve the history and the culture of the community, and utilize events conducted by the CRA to inform and to get input from the community, and that it would include stakeholders, particularly residents, and those who have a stake in the neighborhood, specifically of what people would like to see in the historic Sunset Lounge and the surrounding areas. So I was a part of a team with various people, particularly with a consulting group called 880s, Better Block, the Mosaic Group, and Sorrel Phillips. Of course, the CRA was a recipient of the 2016 Knights City Challenge. So from August 2016 to April 2017, our team spoke to over 800 community people, and that include those who grew up in the neighborhood, those who have interest in the neighborhood, those who have an affinity to the neighborhood, from the faith-based community, businesses, you name it. We talked to, and we used events to draw people in to get their input. Hundreds of individuals gave their input, identifying the needs to preserve the history's rich culture and histories. Participants from all ages wrote down postcards, described their future visions for the neighborhood, completed format surveys, participated on sticky boards about what they thought about the neighborhood, what they wanted to see, and what they would like to see in the Sunset Lounge. In addition to that, we did what is called pop-ups of how the open space across the street from the Sunset would look, and we knew that there must be a historical component to it. Now, I had the privilege of working in 4 museums as a researcher, a tour guide, as well as an archivist, so I knew it was important to do something to get people to talk about what they would like to see. What I did find was the younger generation had not known about some of the history of the historic Sunset Lounge, particularly about the multiple uses that the Sunset Lounge provided. So it wasn't just a bar, it wasn't just a jazz lounge, but it was a space for protests. It was a space for fashion shows. It was a space for food drives, as well as gift drives for Christmas time. So what I did is I compiled various newspaper articles that had everything to do with the Sunset Lounge from the 1940s all the way to the 1980s about the Sunset Lounge. And so we did a collage for people to see that the Sunset Lounge was had various uses, and this is what I came up with in partnership with 880s to tell the Sunset Lounge story more holistically. Also, one of the things that, and this is dear to me, is to preserve some of the items that we found in the Sunset Lounge. What was very interesting is when they did tear down the building next to the Sunset Lounge, we found hundreds of bottles, which is an archaeologist's dream, that we are still, and I'm still interested in, and even Frederic from Historic Preservation is interested in understanding the connections of these bottles. Some of the bottles.
Was anything inside the bottles?
Excuse me?
Was anything inside the bottles?
No, they were all empty.
Oh, okay.
Some of them were liquor. Some of them were liquor bottles, and well, most of them were, and some of them were for medicine bottles. And so some of them, as you can see, the bottom picture, were lined up, so it's very clear they were buried in cases. So there's some interesting research and even conclusions that we can make about that. So even other items that we found in the Sunset Lounge, an old disco ball, some record players, some records and things like that. And so one of my goals is to, one, preserve those items and help tell the narratives using those items that we found in the Sunset Lounge. So the other part of what I did, and what I have been doing even extensively, but the first couple years on this project, was really focus on the culturally appropriate way to communicate. A lot of times, when you put out information, it's can be a general standard form of communication and usage of language. However, there are cultural forms of language. And for instance, when you say, and this is an example of the final report, but I edited the final report, and one thing that I did notice were certain terms and words that people may not be familiar with, or just culturally, they just don't talk like that, they don't use that language. So the idea of pop-up, may not be clear to everyone. So as you can see, that's me editing certain, like, what are pop-ups? Can we use another word? So throughout the final report and several of the newsletters, as well as some of the documents, that's what I did, is to look at the culturally appropriate way to present, or what may be offensive, what may be inappropriate to one group may not be inappropriate to another. And it's important to consider the culture of people when you are even communicating and using language. And I worked closely with marketing, and I still do in that regard. And so as a CRA consultant, what I have done and what I still continue to do, and is required of me as a contractor and consultant, is attend CRA staff board meetings and interviews and focus groups, attend all CRA events, activities in the Northwest, and conduct ethnographic research, which is a method anthropologists use. It's on-site research, in your face, on location, which would include participant observation. I'm an active participant. I am immersed in the culture and to understand and get a better understanding, and I observe all the time. I'm constantly observing behavior, how people respond, how they react, and take notes of that, report that, and provide recommendations based upon those observations. And in that process, it was important to build relationships. When you're doing development, sometimes development, you can look at people and a neighborhood as a project and not see the humanity in people. But when you build relationships, you understand on the ground what people are seeing, what they think, and how they even look at redevelopment, because redevelopment for one person might be success, but redevelopment for another person might be the doom of my existence in that neighborhood. So it's important to understand all those aspects, which is very difficult, but you have to consider those things. And so I spent a lot of time with community leaders, leaders of community organizations, faith-based community organizations, city departments, just to, one, get an understanding of the culture of city government. This is a culture in itself, but then the culture of the other entities in which I was immersed in. And I was an outsider, even though I'm an African-American woman, my family is from here, I grew up in Riviera Beach. I moved away and moved back home. I was stamped still as an outsider. So I had to gain access myself when I, start attending meetings and sitting. It's like, well, who are you? And I could not lead with, oh, I'm Dr. Alicia Wynn, applied cultural anthropologist. I had to lead with, I'm Alicia Wynn, the daughter of Ulysses and Alice Wynn, who grew up on Windsor Avenue and 8th Street in Tamron. And that's like, oh, I know your daddy. Girl, come sit down. That was most important. So a lot of times, that happened to me, I would say most of the time. So I also participated in organizations and business events. People saw me all the time. And a lot of times I was there just simply to observe and learn and build relationships with people so people can feel, one, comfortable enough to share and know that I'm here genuinely for them and the community. And so, of course, I spent some time, and I had to explain to my mother while I was hanging out at the Sunset Lounge that I wasn't just hanging out at the bar, but I was doing ethnographic research at the Sunset Lounge, and that was very important to gain a better understanding of what the Sunset Lounge was about and learn the dynamics of the people, the local people at the Sunset Lounge, the people who frequented it, how the Sunset Lounge and the locals were like a family, and how that would affect them when the Sunset is renovated, and will they feel comfortable enough for it to be theirs again. And so it was important for me to do that and just, hang out. And I built so many relationships and learned so much from the workers there, the bartenders, just to get a better understanding. And I had a good time. The bands were awesome. And so in addition to doing that, even when the engagement project was over, I still kept going after that second year to continue with community input. So when we had Heart and Soul, the Heart and Soul Fest, we had a project wall, and I, had people come up and talk and write down things that they want to see, what their concerns are. So I was constantly talking to people if they wanted to write what their fondest memory of the Sunset Lounge was about. They could do that, but also help them see what was going on in the neighborhood constantly and visually at every event we had. And so even building upon all that information, we start building upon that. It's like, okay, we're taking what people say. Okay, so now how would you like that open space to look? How would you like it to feel? So we had several Design Your Park events in which we encourage people to come write down how you would like to feel when you walk in the park, and many people put down want to feel safe and peaceful and tranquil, and and then we even did different activities of how, what type of names, and the community stakeholders named the Sunset, the historic Heart and Soul Park. That's what they chose from this. So it was a constant talking to people. They even drew out, how it would like to look, and they actually took that information and did a layout. I'm not sure what all the terms are with planning, but this is kind of some of the end result of that from the Design Your Park. And so one of the things, I know my time is passing, but one thing I wanted to show is the other aspect, because what I'd noticed in my observation that there were several variations of community. When I heard people talk at meetings and activities and functions, they would say, well, the community needs this, the community needs that. And so my question was, who is the community? you know, and I found that there are several layers of community. The community might mean actual residents who live there 24/7. It might mean business owners. It might mean former people who had these historic ties. But a lot of times people spoke on behalf of the entire community. But what I was interested in is looking at the various views of what a community is. And so many times I would say, okay, well, who are you talking about? Are you talking about the residents? I wasn't talking about everybody. Well, have you checked with what the residents think? Because the residents' priority may be very different from what the business priority. Now, everybody wants to see the historic Northwest do well, but everybody has different levels of what their priorities are. So residents, they want simply, maybe on their block, a clean, safe neighborhood without trash trickling down their street. Now, another person might say, well, the sunset is a priority. And then you see this kind of difference where someone who comes home every day and not sure what they're coming home to, that's their concern. And then here I am coming, hey, have you heard about the sunset? That's not their priority. They like the Sunset Lounge, but their priority is streetlights. You know, their priority is somebody keeping people off their corner so they can have a safe block. So that was something. And so because of that, in 2018, I thought it was appropriate to put residents in the same room to start talking, because I would talk to them here and here and here and here, but to put them in the same room. So, and particularly the most vocal, the most active, the ones that are not afraid to stand up here in front of you all and say what they think. And that's what I did in 2018. And by 2019, we came up with the name Northwest Residents in Action. And this consists of long-term renters and homeowners. And I thought it was important for people to see who actual residents are and what they look like, because there's a misconception about what the historic Northwest is and who lives in the Northwest. You got business owners, you got people who have been owning homes for 20 plus years, you got kids, you got all kind of people, just like any other neighborhood. And so I wanted to bring together, and it works perfectly, Mayor, with your neighborhoods first, perfectly in what you want to do and what you've been doing with this. And so what their vision and their mission, they came up with a vision, they came up with a mission to help those in needs in the community through residents helping a community of neighbors. Their vision is to have a safe and clean neighborhood, build community partnerships, bring accountability, and revitalize their neighborhoods, just like everybody else. And so they are very active. We're working towards even building even more. So much so, we had the opportunity on September 26th, Mayor, to have a neighborhood walk. And we thank you so much for attending, as well as Chris Rugg, our CRA director, as well as Gina Baker and Commissioner Fox. It made a world of a difference when we walked through the neighborhood, so you can see a on-the-ground view of how the residents see their neighborhood and what they think. And it was wonderful. They still talk about that now, and they're really ignited to even move forward. And as you can see, this is us, Mayor, walked through the neighborhood, and we were able to talk to him, and they were able to talk to him and point out different things that's going on in the neighborhood, certain issues, what challenges, recommendations, and they were able to talk to some of the elders and even potential business owners in the neighborhood. And so, and lastly, the other part of this, in response to COVID, there were such active residents and community people that responded to COVID. The city, you all did a wonderful job in what you all have done, but even within the core of the neighborhoods, there was a great response. As you can see, the top to the far left, you see the owner of the Queen of Sheba, and residents and connected to the Newport Diner and True Fast Ministries got together and passed out hot meals. Cityside Suites they ended up becoming frontline workers because they kept their business open to provide their computers and printers to print out rental assistance program applications and to help those residents who needed to fill out forms in response to COVID. And then, of course, in the PAL and Tabernacle passed out food and did COVID testing, so it was very active amongst residents and everyone in the neighborhood. And in addition to that, as far as the preservation piece, we see partnerships with Habitat for Humanities, and thank you again, Mayor. You were very present and active there, in which we incorporated 5 historic markers in the neighborhoods to help tell the story about the Northwest, Industrial High School, the Wall of Freedom, and one of our pioneers, Cracker Johnson. We also have our pioneer banners throughout which we work with organizations to upload and put up pioneers of the first Black midwife, Carl Robinson, who owned several businesses and grocery stores, and Dr. Died, who was a doctor on 3rd and Rosemary. And so again, I think it's important to, one, in redevelopment, I know there are deadlines and dates, but it's important to see the humanity in redevelopment and consider historical sensitivity and cultural sensitivity and understand the stakeholders' perception, because the stakeholders' perception, sometimes the pushback has to do with not what's happening now, but what has happened in the past. So they're responding to what hasn't happened in the past. So how do you get them to trust and to embrace and move forward and partner with them? So changing the community perception outside, dispelling the myths, and partnerships, not paternalism, where we're coming in and saving the day, but you see in people as their equal and working and collaborating and partnering with them. And neighborhoods, not projects. It's easy to go in and do a project and never talk to people, but we're dealing with neighborhoods first, Mayor, not projects. And so therefore you have to be intentional, and it may take time. So you might have a deadline of 6 months, you might have to push it back to 9 months for the sake of the actual people in the neighborhood. So to dispel the myths, I think is important so people can see, because I try to show these images. These are businesses that are all in the Northwest. It's important for people to know that, the historic Northwest is not this negative, dark place, but it is thriving. People have always thrived. People have always had businesses, and they have a history of businesses down Tamron, down Rosemary, and it still exists today and is moving forward with the help of the CRA and the city to make that happen. So lastly, continued steps. Preservation of the Sunset Lounge, I'm continuing that. Promote Northwest resident decision-making and involvement in redevelopment. Recruiting more residents to be a part of the organization. Increasing communication. Cultural considerations in historical communities. Consider the history and the culture, as well as promote the basic neighborhood needs. It doesn't matter if you're spending millions of dollars on a building and the people up the street don't have streetlights. There has to be a balance. So the difference in priority of different people and neighborhoods first. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nguyen. This information is so timely. I think you participate in our Action Summit over the weekend.
Yes, sir.
And we're starting to learn the interlinkages of the history of our city with some of the current disproportionate effects,
yes,
whether it's in education, healthcare, et cetera. So that history is so important, and so your information is quite timely. Board members, do you have any questions, comments for Dr. Nguyen? Yes, Commissioner Lambert. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nguyen. I hope my eyes can show you the huge smile I had during your presentation. I didn't know if it was appropriate, but I wanted to give you a standing ovation. I mean, that was phenomenal. And clearly, you're very talented and good at your craft, because the presentation was, thorough yet concise, yet told the story of the stories of the neighborhoods and the residents and the business owners that you are interacting with every day. And Mayor, to you, to the CRA, thank you for bringing Alicia to the city, because I think you are a true asset to our community here. And, I just a few notes that I took here, mainly because I was so enthralled in the presentation, but I love what you're saying about, number one, it's about preserving our history, but it's also about, what's going on and how we're moving forward, and that this is more than just projects. So, I appreciate that aspect of it. I appreciate that you are helping us to identify the needs in the community so that this body can then make decisions intelligently and informed on what we need moving forward. I would like to encourage us to get this presentation and this story out, because I think, because of COVID, there's not that many people here, maybe because it's 8:30 in the morning. But, I think that this message can help get the word out, because as excited as I am about this, I'm not naive to realize that, there are some people who don't understand what's going on still. And I appreciated what you said about, that some residents, quite frankly, don't care what's going on with the Sunset Lounge, because they're worried about, their lights and paying their utility bills. And so I think, getting this message out is really important. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is I love that this started in the historic Northwest. And, I hope that this can become a model for other activities that we do in this city, because I think that it's a great way to capture our history, to plan, to be inclusive, to be transparent, and to really get the will of the community. So thank you so much.
And I think what it also does is it helps us combat gentrification.
Yeah.
As we develop an appreciation, an understanding of the neighborhood itself. As we are making decisions about the future of that neighborhood, we are taking into account the interests, the opinions, the concerns of those who have lived in that neighborhood. And as we develop that sensitivity, it will help us as decision makers and policy makers to guide and direct projects, making sure that they are taking into account those same interests and concerns. So your work is very, very, very much needed. And not just in this neighborhood, but as Commissioner Lambert said, it could be a model in other parts of our city. Any other, Madam President?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Dr. Nguyen, for your presentation. I can't say it any better than Commissioner Lambert said it. So just wanted to say thank you for that. And you've touched on a number of things that are ongoing in the historic Northwest, and a number of things that you've kind of put into the works. Do you have any plans for things that are next? What can we continue to do? How can we take this momentum that you've built and make sure that we continue that down the road?
I think it's important to keep engaging and utilizing, and Chris and I talked a lot about this and ways to do it, and utilizing all resources we have to, one, be on the ground and use multiple forms of communicating, and not necessarily informing, but allowing people to have input, and utilizing text and utilizing going door to door and all those specific things. I think that's important to do, and continue conversations with people. And then also the part of affordable housing, and even Mayor even kind of alluded to that, is there are many long-term renters that want to live in the neighborhood, and how do you work it towards where they can actually stay in the neighborhood and become homeowners, because they've been in the neighborhood 15, 20 years, but they're renters. And so that's I think another conversation that should be had. And then the other part of just continuing, informing you about that, and partnering with those who are already doing things, and the work that you all are doing as well, continuing those conversations.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That was fantastic. You obviously bring so much joy to your job, and I've loved working with you. Thank you for all the introductions you've made for me. I really appreciate it. I just had one
Commissioner, could you speak closer to the microphone?
I just had one question. I know you and I have spoken about it a little bit, about the different level of priorities, and you touched on it today, between the residents and some of the businesses, and you touched on today about bringing the residents together for Residents in Action. I'm wondering if there's opportunities for the residents and the business community to come together just about their differing priorities, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. Yes,
there are, and we've had a few meetings where residents have been with a few business owners as well. We've had meetings, Residents in Action have talked to some of the business owners, even have invited them to come to the monthly meetings that they've had, to work together so that everybody can kind of be on the same page and get those things that they are needing in the community together. Because there are some similarities of what they need, and then how can they work together to help each other out to make sure those needs are met. So yes, we just COVID, shut a lot of things down, but that was something that we have been working towards and doing on a smaller level with them meeting together. But I think that that's something that we can do even more aggressively, especially that they're the two that's in the neighborhood probably the most,
Anything else? Well, again, Dr. Nguyen, thank you so much for a very thorough, comprehensive presentation, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future as we continue to do the work of the CRA. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Mr. Rugg, do you have any other comments? You want to move right into number 2? Do you want to tee it up?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So next up is going to be the discussion about 314 Clematis Street. As you know, this has been a project that's been ongoing that has been primarily focused on creating more opportunities for small businesses to have a foothold on Clematis Street. This started back a few years ago now with the Knight Foundation and a grant that we got from the Knight Cities Challenge. That was about $180,000 in that grant. We still have some of those funds left over as the project has evolved. But since taking over as CRA Executive Director, in an effort to create more capacity for staff, one of the things that Raphael and I have been talking about is having the DDA take more of a lead on this project so that we can focus on the historic Northwest and other parts of our CRA that are very, very important. The DDA is extremely capable and they bring both a high level of execution and an excellent sense of creativity to their projects that I think you all will be impressed with. So the idea behind this is that Raphael and I want to share our road plan for this project moving forward because we hope to get it underway starting early next year. Raph?
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. It's great actually to see you all in 3D in real life. And thanks for your time this morning on this project. We, speaking on behalf of myself, the staff, and DDA board, we're really excited to be partnering so closely with the CRA, particularly with Chris Rugg on this. And I want to be sure I call out my colleagues here this morning, Tanika James Feynman and Cheryl Moriente, who both of them, particularly Cheryl, have done so much of the heavy lifting on this project. So just a quick rundown of what our presentation will be this morning, a brief overview of the project, because yes, there has been a pretty significant gap in time from when this started to where we are now, our target outcomes, what the budget is, what has inspired us and what has informed us in terms of how we can get the best possible outcome for West Palm Beach here, our tenanting plan, operations, and then the long-term vision for the project, and then of course a Q&A. So just a recap, 314 Clematis, it's total 29,000 square feet, roughly 14,000 square foot ground floor, 2-story building. It has office tenants upstairs. It was Woolworth's originally, historically. It was a recipient of a Knight Cities Challenge, as was noted, a 12 for 12 project, a prestigious competition nationally with the Knight Foundation. The current status is the interior is demoed out. The patio is a wonderful pop-up market, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And we are moving ahead with getting the project reactivated. There's lots of blessings in disguise, and we were well underway with this project. COVID hit, things changed, and perhaps this pause has given us the opportunity to really step back and look at what is the best outcome here and how can we achieve that within a limited budget. The project team, as Chris Rugg noted, the CRA, the DDA, a consultant, which will be a market study consultant, a market expert to help us really identify a tenant mix and inform the build out for the space. We want to get it right. And then of course our entrepreneurial community, including 1909 and all those small businesses, some of them brick and mortar, some of them virtual, that are collaborating with us on a day-to-day basis in downtown period, but particularly here with 314. I think it's important to note, we often beat ourselves up about vacancies in downtown. And if we take a long view of this, prior to suburbanization, prior to malls, prior to, Wellington happening, all what are now what we call today big boxes existed on our main street. J.C. Penney, Woolworths, Burdines, Belk's, they were all in downtown West Palm Beach. Today, even in strip malls and in malls, we see big boxes struggling, where they have dedicated parking, where they're clustered together with compatible market partners. So to say we're having a hard time filling a 14,000 square foot retail space on a main street in America is not a unique problem. It is a problem that every city is facing, even the biggest cities, even New York, Chicago, LA, are facing similar challenges. Target outcomes. A market study, and we are well underway with identifying the right consultant for this. We feel this is a very important step to take because market conditions have changed dramatically since the project started. We want to be sure that we identify the needs of the space, not necessarily the exact tenants, but what are the needs of the space for a tenant mix that will be compatible with what we can provide. For example, do we need a commissary kitchen where it's not 10 kitchens in 10 different spaces? Can we keep the space cost down and build one kitchen? What blend of retail and non-retail should we have, et cetera? Project design, obviously that'll come with architectural, with a professional architect. Construction, date to be determined, but our goal, and it is an aggressive goal, is to tenant the project a year from now. I like to be aggressive, so.
Mr. Clemente, before you move off that slide, can you tell us a little bit more about what the scope of the market study is? What are you looking for and looking at?
We're going to look at our local market area, what we would maybe call our drive market. And if we want to know more, Tanika's done probably a half dozen of these, but our local market area, what is missing in our local market area? So in downtown, we know we have a severe lack of small spaces. And when we look at what we have here and what's thriving, what we have in the larger market area and what's thriving, and then nail down what sort of tenant mix and what blend of tenants will work in this market, and then go after those categories of tenants.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And in fact, Mayor, we're looking a little broader. Can we use the market data to do more than just 314 Clematis? Can it help the Northwest? I mean, it's not a pinpoint on an address, it's a market area. So we feel like this is probably an important step to take for the next year or two as we look to recruit tenants and even just look at our greater downtown area.
And what's the defined market area? It's more than just Clematis Street?
Yes, it is. So we would consider that a 20-mile area? A 20-mile
Okay,
radius.
we can't capture her comments. Can you at least repeat what she just said?
Yes, Mayor. The defined market area would be roughly a 20-mile radius.
Okay.
Typically, I think in market research speak, that's what we would call our drive market.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. The budget, not including operating costs, 1 year of operating costs, the CRA has $3 million for the project. Knight Foundation contributed $90,000. I believe that's what's left is $90,000. The DDA's portion will be to fund the market study, which we're refining that number now. It'll probably be somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 is my guess. Our goal is to have build-out costs come in at under $100 a square foot. And doing the math on 14,000 square feet, we're just under $1.5 million. We don't want to come near the $3 million max amount. We want to get it refined and right so we can deliver the best product possible.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes. Yes.
So I do want to just note that $100 a square foot because both Raphael and I are sensitive to the fact that the reason the CRA came to own this project was because of the high cost of build out that initially was proposed, and the comfort of this board spending that kind of money on a building that we didn't own. So knowing that we are trying to be mindful that not to spend really more than what we need to make this project a success.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the budget? Similar projects that we've looked at, both in person and then virtually, I'll say, whoops. Selden Market in Norfolk, Virginia, which I think is the most applicable to what we are looking to achieve here. Maquetto in DC, and then in Baltimore, Our House and Cross Street Market, which Cheryl and I actually were, I didn't get to Our House, I got to Cross Street. But these are projects that we feel are very similar in style and scope to what we look to achieve here at 314. Selden Market in particular, and most specifically because it is a partnership with the City of Norfolk, their downtown organization, Downtown Norfolk, and the private sector, which almost is, it's virtually identical to what we're looking to do here. A simple design, the mix of tenants looks like what we would want to achieve here, small flexible spaces, and then a common area kitchen. In fact, one of my colleagues on an International Downtown Association board, Mary Miller, is with Downtown Norfolk, and they've been a great resource. They sent us their market study, the job description for their market manager, et cetera. So we're really looking at the best practices for what.
Is it a similar size space?
I think it's a little bit bigger actually than it's a little bigger than 314 Clematis.
Okay.
Tenant Plan, that's obviously based on the market study. Then we'll identify an ideal tenant mix. Of course, that's what we would consider ideal, and then go and try to recruit those tenants. We do not have an idea of how many spaces there will be yet. We do not have an idea of what the support services necessary for the interior space will look like, but we will have that. Our goal is to have that probably by mid or late January based on the market study outcome. And then long-term, years 1 through 3 of operations will be informed by what we learned from the market study and the build-out, the design at least. It is probably the best recommendation to have the market itself established as a standalone corporation with a manager, its own budget, et cetera, because it will be receiving income and it will be paying costs as a business entity. Next steps, immediate next steps, an interlocal agreement, and I look at our city attorney, to define the specific scope of services the DDA will be providing to the CRA on this. The market study, then architectural services, and a contractor. Right now, if you haven't seen it, on Saturday, Thoroughfare opened. You can see. Do I have a little bit of time? Am I running close?
I don't know, Mr. Rook, how much time did you give him?
No, you're doing good, Ref. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. So the website is thoroughfare.co, no M, just .co. Thoroughfare opened this Saturday, the 5th. Great, beautiful opening, great day with the green market, the antique market going on. The street was lively. The vendors that are in the space right now, Oddfellows, Oceana Coffee, Grow. I'm having a hard time operating here. And then soon to come, Dina's Vegan Deli, although she may be waiting for brick and mortar final build out. Cider Donuts, Bubbly Boba, and After 5 Lux. But the space, which I'll show you. Well, first let me show you. So already we are looking to build a buzz and build energy around what Thoroughfare will be. That's the, at least right now, the name of, and I think the best thing would be to continue on with this, of what the space will be called as a market space. These are the brand guidelines developed by Pathos. They did amazing work with us on this right here in downtown. They're a downtown business. How the brand guidelines would be applied in various promotions and marketing of the space. And then the opening, you can see what the space looks like, how it's laid out and designed. I'm happy to say that I think all of our vendors had sales, and there was a lot of interest in what they had to offer there. And yes, we did take the holiday spirit all the way, and the space has a beautiful nighttime vibe. And right here we have our Furla cart. Chris, you want to talk about that a little bit?
So when we initially started the Thoroughfare project, we wanted to build a place and a system where success was the most likely income. And sometimes that means going where the customers are, because not all the times the customers are going to be walking in front of the store. So this idea of using bicycles or specific carts that are powered by just pedals, and being able to move around the city was something that we would experiment with. So these Furla bikes were purchased as part of the project, and the first has arrived. We have a second one coming for Oceana Coffee, where they will have the ability to be mobile and move around the city.
What'd you call it, a furlough bike?
Furla bikes.
That's the brand.
Oh, okay.
F-E-R-L-A, Furla.
So what you can't see behind here is that it actually has a seat and a handlebar, gears, the whole 9 yards. Although if you go too fast, I heard that you could take a spill.
Just
But
keeping a straight
you'd
line.
have to really pedal really fast.
Okay.
And then, yes, we even have a life-size snow globe you can get in and take a great picture at the Thoroughfare. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Very
pleasure.
good. I'm glad that we are figuring out a path forward with this space. It has been bedeviling, if to say the least, over the past year. But let me ask you something. Can you speak to the structural integrity of the space? I know we've hollowed it out, and there were some rumors that perhaps there were some structural defects that had to be cured. What is the integrity of the building? Or maybe Mr.
Sure.
Rube,
Yeah,
can you
I'm
speak
happy.
to
I'm
that?
happy to speak to that. So when we were originally talking about the interior build out, one of the plans, which I still think is a good one, was to remove the entire back wall of the building that lines the alleyway to Datura that is on the south side of the building. In order to do that, the engineers had to do essentially some exploratory engineering by digging out the footers that are holding up the building. So if you go inside the building, you'll see these holes that are around the poles that are holding up the building. And that was basically to ensure that the footings of the building were sound in order to hold up the building so that that back wall could be removed. We have the engineering report that says the building is very sound, those footings are secure, so we can move forward with removing that back wall if we so choose. But that'll be more that'll come with the architectural as we start pricing out the project. And again, I can't emphasize enough that one of our main goals is really keeping that cost of construction down so that the project remains within budget.
Good, thank you. Commissioners, board members, any other? Yeah, okay. Madam President, we'll go to Commissioner Fox.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Raphael, for the presentation. I am very supportive of, kind of dividing and conquering, making sure that we're using economies of scale to have our project move forward. I just really want to be mindful, and I know, Raphael, you're always very mindful about the districts of the DDA versus the district boundaries of the CRA, in that the downtown is very impacted here, but it impacts an area broader than what is your typical focus given your charge. So just so long as we're mindful of the impact, and it sounds like you are with things like the market study, which I think is a very good idea, that we would look at the entirety of the market and how this particular project would affect outside of the downtown area as well. Particularly, I think that's a smart idea so that we are not building what we think is needed, that we've taken a look and not just say, if we build it, they will come. We will say, we've built what we know you need. So yes. Very supportive of that as well. My questions surround the design, and thank you very much, Chris, for talking about the price per square foot, et cetera. I know there were a number of things we had considered, which would be fantastic architectural structures, but I know I had been considering along the enormous cost of this, and when renovating old buildings, you're going to run into those costs. So it sounds like January 2021 is when we'll start to look at some of those designs, and we're considering all things on the table now is the thing I wanted to confirm. So originally we talked about taking out an elevator shaft, taking out the back wall of the building, all of which create a very, very nice space, but are very expensive. So I just want to make sure that we're considering all of our construction needs of saying what is going to have the most impact, because for me, what's most important is the impact that's going to occur for our small businesses. And if we're going to spend dollars, I want to have the best space for them within reason, but also make sure that we're focusing on the economics of those small businesses. So if you could talk a little bit about the design timing, and kind of what our theory is going forward.
Sure. Yes, I can, Commissioner. And a very brief response to the bigger picture. I often find myself wringing my hands a little bit over the limitations of the district, because yes, absolutely, downtown is one single piece of this great city, and I think we learned very well this year about the value and importance of sharing everything we can get. If it works in downtown and it can work everywhere else, please have it and take it and use it, or build on it, make it better. So yes, that we are approaching this with that exact same mindset. The design of the space, not to critique the previous design, but yes, it was a high design approach. I think that every example we've looked at that I mentioned earlier, and even locally, Bednar's that just opened on Dixie, the warehouse district, the space is as simple as it can be. And our approach with this is bare necessities and make the space look nice and make it function well. But the show is the tenants. The show is are the businesses that will locate in the space and the things that will happen in the space. So effectively, we are looking at a white box approach that is going to give those tenants everything they need. But when you walk in the space, you're going to see storefronts. Effectively, you're not going to look at architectural design and other features that really won't add value to the tenant outcomes. If I'm right on that, I mean.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could add to that,
Yes.
Mayor and Commissioners, the other thing is, we have gone out and talked to some operators of some of these spaces that Raphael just mentioned, and that is one of the critical things to success, is that by keeping those costs down, that it extrapolates to the overall cost for the small businesses to be able to maintain rent on the street for the long term.
Yeah. An example I'll give about how cost savings comes in. I'm not an architect or a GC, but when we did the DDA office, which I think you've all been in, we took a completely sleek, bare bones approach. We had a very limited budget. And when we got down to brass tacks on saving money, not doing baseboards in a space a third the size of this saved us $10,000. And when I walk into that space every day, no one's ever said, "Where's your baseboards?" So I really think that when we get into design for something of this size, all those little details that we would maybe have put in are going to be stripped out, and then we're going to say, what do we need to make it work? And go the other direction, not have a design idea. We're going to go into a what do we need to make it work, and then design it from there.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. And I saw several people posting your snow globe over the weekend on Facebook, so it was a big success, I think. My question is about the market study specifically. Is it only going to be for the 314 Clematis Street location, or will it be sort of taking the whole street into consideration? I guess I've always wondered why Clematis Street couldn't function a little bit more like, let's say, City Place. I know it's not apples to apples in that Rosemary Square has one owner and there's several owners on Clematis Street, but that could we be going after things that would be successful for the street rather than just looking for tenants who could afford to be there. So I'm just curious if when you are working on this market study and looking, in this 20-mile radius will you also be considering just other locations on Clematis Street that might still be needing tenants?
The initial goal, and I'm going to ask, which one of you want to come up? Yeah? So I think that, so the short answer is yes. The market study we'll be able to apply what we learn to the street, but I think we are specifically looking at a tenant mix that will suit small spaces. So one of our challenges with Clematis and with downtown in general is a lack of small spaces. Most of our spaces are well over 1,000 feet, some of them obviously approaching 10,000 feet and more, 10,000 square feet and more. And that's historically been our challenge on Clematis, is how do you find, in a sinking brick and mortar retail environment, how do you find tenants to take spaces that are very, very big? So yes, we will be applying what we learned to the entire street and beyond, to the downtown district and beyond. Obviously, anything we do, we're happy to just share and make it available to everyone. But for this project, we are going to specifically look to identify tenants that are of the right size and right character to get it right here. And if those tenants don't work here, maybe they work at Cityside Suites, maybe they work in the shotgun component of the Sunset Lounge. Maybe they work elsewhere. Maybe they work on Northwood Road. But it's specifically with the goal of getting it right for 314.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Raphael. The small entrepreneurs or the small businesses that are doing the thoroughfare right now, it looked like those were ones that were part of the original group that did the contest. And I know that was part of the discussions of the original concept of this building, but it sounds like with the market study, which I'm in favor of, that might be sunsetting then the contestants, or can you share a little bit more about that?
That's a great question, and I'm happy you asked it, Commissioner Lambert. No, these tenants we will do everything we can to keep them and protect them, because they have been with us through the entire process, and we are 100% committed to them becoming long-term brick and mortar tenants of the space. Absolutely. Anything that would come out of the market study would be in addition to those tenants that have been with us that wish to come and sign a lease and be here.
Great. Follow-up?
Follow-up? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. And so are we providing, so I remember we had talked about providing support services for those small businesses. Is that going on right now?
It is, and I'll invite Cheryl up if you want to talk a little bit about that. I wish I had more time because there's so much going on behind the scenes, but.
Cheryl Muniente, Manager of Urban Planning, Placemaking with the DDA. So yes, right now what's happening is they are not only the tenants that were from the competition, but when I look at the space with my architect mindset, there's potentially spaces that can rotate in terms of pop-ups existing in there, and we could probably have anything from 10 to about 16 spaces. So we have to complement them. And so part of that study is to bring that extra energy that has to happen. We're testing that out right now. We have 1909 with one booth, and they rotate. So for example, yesterday, Carl Moon opened with a candle store. And that is, we're testing the same thing at a micro level that will happen inside the space. And I hope that answered your
Yeah,
question.
thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we're not losing sight of that original concept to help foster small businesses to become medium and large
And may I add,
businesses.
during pandemic, what we did, we helped them with e-commerce. They've had a lot of training in social media. They've been using social media to do anything from giveaways to keep their businesses alive. So we have been active since we closed, but just online.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Clemente? Okay. Thank you very much. Look forward to hearing the results of the market study.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to you and your board for working with us on this project. We appreciate your assistance. Okay. Mr. Rugg, item 3.
Thank you, Mayor. So the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology has been running full steam ahead for a while now. And as you all know, back in 2018, a feasibility study was conducted when we decided to formally begin pursuing creating a Center for Arts and Technology that is part of the Manchester Bidwell National Center for Arts and Technology, and having a local center here in the city of West Palm Beach. I don't want to steal too much of former Mayor Moyo's thunder on where we've been, but everything from programming to site development to working with FAU on even designs of what the building could look like have all been underway. And we're very excited about where this project is heading. In addition, there will be a there will be an item on next Monday's CRA agenda for a grant to continue the efforts and work of the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology, primarily focused on really ramping up their capital campaign and helping them with the fundraising in order to make the facility a reality. We have the $5 million that has been set aside in the CRA funds for the construction of that facility. But there are some benchmarks that will be negotiated with the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology that's primarily tied to their ability to raise funds. So it's a long-term partnership, but we're very excited, and I think you'll be very pleased with what you're about to hear from former Mayor Moyo.
Great, thank you. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm honored to be here and actually see you all in person. It's a treat. And I also want to say it's been great listening to the progress that's being made with 314 and the great work that Dr. Alicia Wynn continues to do. So congratulations. I'm going to take a few minutes to just give you some introductory remarks and talk a little bit about the history of the West Palm Beach Center for Arts and Technology. The concept really, it says 2017, but some of you may remember way back when I was actually a commissioner, Bill Strickland came to West Palm Beach and spoke, and several of us got really excited about this concept and tried to get it off the ground at that point. Really couldn't, but it really came to fruition in 2017 when former director of the CRA, John Ward, and I said, let's move this forward. So in 2017, we launched the idea and considered the unique model. We brought a group of community leaders to Pittsburgh to visit the Manchester Bidwell program. And the Manchester Bidwell program's been around for 50 years. There's a focus on arts for high school youth and targeted job training for unemployed and underemployed adults. And the youth program is really focused on on-time graduation with a very singular focus of getting young people to graduate high school. And the jobs program is focused on getting unemployed and underemployed folks jobs that are meaningful, high wage, and have a career track. In 2018, as part of our partnership with Manchester Bidwell, a feasibility study was conducted. And the feasibility study did a real in-depth look, and I hope you all have had a chance to look at it. But they did a real in-depth look at the jobs market here in West Palm Beach. They looked at our economic viability. They looked at those jobs that pay at least a living wage, have a career track, where there are jobs available and where there's a lack of training programs. And they recommended that also the CAT be formed in the Northwest District.
Excuse me, Jerry, could we get someone to close that back door, please? There's a lot of
Thank you.
noise.
So the vision of the West Palm Beach CAT is, first of all, for youth, for high school-aged youth, after-school programs that will focus on the digital and performing arts. We're particularly focusing on the performing arts because of the proximity to the Sunset Lounge. For adults, we will be focusing on culinary, horticulture, and pre-apprentice construction training. These are the areas that were identified as a result of the feasibility study. The facility will be a state-of-the-art facility built in the Northwest. One of the tenets of Manchester Bidwell, one of their strong principles, is that the facilities where these programs are housed is beautiful. It's light-filled, it's art-filled. Phil Strickland feels very strongly about the way a place looks and how that affects the people in that place. And of course, we'll have to be focusing on fundraising. We're looking at $10 million, $5 million from which will be the CRA and $5 million will be raised from other sources. The fact that we have that $5 million match will certainly help us raise the other $5 million. I want to introduce you to our board. We do have our not-for-profit status, and our board is made up of community leaders. These folks have been working really, really hard to get this off the ground. They are worker bees. They're out there doing important things all the time. Peter Jaiga from the Associated Builders and Contractors has the pre-construction program up and running. Michael Corbett, our connection to, I always want to say workforce, but Career Source. And of course, Bruce Lewis and Stuart Bosley, our community people. And John Howe is our attorney. And Stacy Watson Bosley actually was the executive director of the CAT in Buffalo. So she has an amazing background. So I want to tell you a little bit about our Summer Youth Arts Program. And it was a pilot program, and to do that, I'm going to ask Gervonta Edmonds to come up. Gervonta was our director of the summer program, and he's going to tell you a little bit about it. Gervonta?
Good morning, everybody. Commissioner,
Morning.
Mayor. So this is my first CRA meeting, and one thing I noticed is there's no time limit. So I guess I got free to talk as long as I need. So for those who know me, my name is Gervonta Edmonds. I'm the executive director for Suits for Seniors and the West Palm Beach Police Athletic League. And I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to be the director of programs for the West Palm Beach CAT during this year's summer. What was specifically very unique about this program was COVID, right? And this program happened in the middle of July during unprecedented outbreak of COVID, where we still didn't know exactly how we were going to figure it out, how we were going to do virtual learning in the next semester, but yet and still somehow we got together a dozen kids from West Palm Beach, whether it's Palm Beach Lakes, Suncoast, or Forest Hill, that came together once a week at the Salvation Army for 3.5 hours to learn about artwork. Most of these kids came from a very simplistic background, meaning they didn't know anything about art. Half of them never had an art class before, so this was their first time experiencing art. It was a unique experience to have 4 teachers from the Dreyfus School of Arts come out and teach these students. They would have class on Wednesday at Salvation Army for 3.5 hours. They would then have a one-on-one meeting with their teachers from Dreyfus School of the Arts, and then they would have a group session on Monday via Zoom. So they were really ahead of the game when it came to virtual learning, doing group sessions, one-on-one sessions, and in-person sessions. I can tell you from a very novice perspective of art that I learned a lot just sitting in those classes, from shading, coloring, to how to make nature into art, that I know that the kids took away some very tangible skills that they have put to use in their classes today. I've ran into the kids afterwards, a student by the name of Kevin, freshman, who took this course as well. When he saw me, when I returned to Salvation Army, he still had his art book. Somehow he carried his art book that we gave to him over the summer. He still holds it with him to this day. So when he saw me, he was so elated just to show me his new artwork, to show me what he has been updating, all the skills that he took from the summer courses. So this is a true opportunity for the kids in our community who have these artistic skills, who want to be artists but just don't know where to go with it. The West Palm Beach CAT gives them an avenue to not only learn artwork, but how to take that and make it into a post-secondary skill to also pay them later on in life. And that's pretty much it. I think I maybe moved the slideshow when I wasn't supposed to, but that's pretty much it. We had 12 great kids, and I can tell you it's an experience for kids who never thought about being an artist, kids who come from low-income backgrounds who never thought that they would ever have a chance in the art space. The West Palm Beach Cats give them that avenue. They give them and pair them with the right teachers, the right mentors, and the right supervision that makes sure that they can be successful. And thank you, Commission, for your time.
Thank you.
I don't know, Gervonta, did you mess this up? Sorry. Oh, there you go. Good. A couple of things I wanted to point out is we got funding for the summer program from the Knight Foundation. We held it at the Salvation Army. We were originally going to hold it at the Dreyfus School. And I have to say, Dr. Atherley and the folks at the Dreyfus School were very welcoming to us. They really wanted us to be able to hold it there. But of course, because of COVID, the Dreyfus School was closed, so we couldn't do it there. And the Salvation Army folks were awesome. We had a great end of the session event at Rosemary Square, and the folks at Rosemary Square donated a lot to us to have that. I also wanted to say something about earlier. We've entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Salvation Army. That memorandum says that we will work together to figure out how to use that space most appropriately. And I have to say, the Salvation Army has been a great partner up to now. They've been working with FAU, trying to create the architectural designs, and they've really been awesome. And as I said earlier, our high school youth program is going to be digital arts, performing arts, a career training, culinary, horticulture, and pre-apprentice. So I want to now turn it over to PJ Lang. PJ Lang is helping us out with development and also serving as interim executive director. They have been, the PJ Lang and Associates have been with us starting in September. So they've been doing some work September, October, part of November. We were able to fund their work out of our budget, which has, as a result, significantly decreased. And that's why we'll be coming before you next Monday. So, PJ? Thank you.
Good morning. I gave them to Chris. Would you be able to hand this out?
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. Mayor,
Morning.
commissioners. Good to meet everyone and see everyone in person. I had the privilege of attending the summit this weekend, and needless to say, can't wait to get together to keep working with my group. We've already connected. It was
Fantastic.
a
Thank you so much.
great opportunity. Thank you very much. So Chris is going to hand out for us our capital campaign case for support and 10 reasons. I am PJ Lang. Many of you know me. I have 25 to 35-year background in nonprofit management with an emphasis on fundraising. And it is my privilege and pleasure to be a part of this project. So we've been brought on to serve as the interim executive director, and really a key, in addition to fundraising, a key role is building the infrastructure. As we know, this will require a team in every which way. I have 4 people alone from my team, from PJL Associates, which has been here in West Palm Beach for the last 5 years doing fundraising and development, working on what it's taking us to do right now, serving in the capacity of interim executive director. And that's with Jerry and the board working, as she mentioned, as a working board, working tirelessly. So we are working on the lead on infrastructure, fundraising. We have been carrying out leadership interviews with the board, primarily in developing a capital campaign. What you start with is developing your prospects, both your corporate sponsorship prospects and your individual donor prospects. Just from the leadership interviews, we've put together 50 from the board, 50 from corporate, and 50 that were already existing. So we've got 150 prospects we're already looking at, actually really 2 months into this, although I started Zoom calls with Jerry and the Manchester Bidwell Center last July. I've had the privilege of meeting with and working with the Boston Center of Arts Technology Executive Director, and with working with Stacy on our board, who, as Jerry mentioned, was very closely involved in the Buffalo Center. So between the Buffalo Center and the Boston Center and Manchester Bidwell, I feel like I'm in good support, and I have a team around me, and we have a team around us helping to build this. We're not alone. So we've been working on developing prospects, a donor database. We've been working on grants. And we have already had meetings with Quantum. We're meeting with Community Foundation. We have additional meetings planned. We've already submitted grants. But a big part of what we've been doing, and you've already addressed this, is the need for marketing and letting people know about the historic Northwest and about the center. I find that so many people I speak to don't know of the historic Northwest, let alone the center. So when we first got in, it really wasn't even a part of our contract, but we've spent the last 2 months developing the material you have here. I have someone now who, as we speak this morning, has jumped in on the website. So really, these are all things that we just felt like we couldn't, you can't do fundraising without marketing. They're like joined at the hip. So I think it was the first thing I talked to Chris about is our need for PR, marketing, and support for the historic Northwest and the center. That's how we'll raise money, both from a corporate standpoint and from a donor perspective. So we're working on developing the capital campaign, and what that looks like is developing a gift chart, naming opportunities, and a case for support. We are working on looking for major and leadership gifts for naming opportunities. We are also working with FAU on the plans so that we'll put together the budget and the naming opportunities. I have been doing leadership tours and tours in the historic Northwest already. I joke around I could start selling tickets. There's that many people that want to put their mask on and get out and walk around. So we've been doing that. We've already brought some donors over who are very, very interested in next steps. So that's a big part of it, and Chris was very helpful in that tour. And now we put on our walking shoes and we get out and we do the tour. And now if we could get some restaurants open someday down there soon, hopefully with Queen of Sheba reopening soon, it'll be exciting to do that. So we've also, since October, been working with the board, providing leadership, coaching, donor development, and we have developed a concept for a drive-in evening of jazz. Bill Strickland and Manchester Bidwell, the arts, a big part of the arts for them comes out of jazz. They even have several Grammy award-winning labels for jazz. And our community in the historic Northwest and on our board, between Darrell Bay, Bosley Stewart, Bruce Lewis, they are really excited about the idea of putting together a jazz event that we feel like in the spring could also help us launch the capital campaign. As we know, it'll probably have to be a drive-in event if it can't be on the premises, although there's a piece of land there that if we could use that, vaccine pending, that would be great. If not, we're looking at some rooftop decks and parking lots that would surround and look right down on the area where we would build. In the event business, I've done two drive-in events so far. They've been very successful, and we can either stream or bring in video and do a jazz event using jazz artists from Manchester Bidwell on some of our South Florida jazz artists. And again, it could be with the Sunset Lounge. That's our roots, jazz. So we feel like that would be really great. And then we've wrapped up the case for support that you're looking at. That is a 12-page document. And that is a case for support. It doesn't have the naming opportunities yet because we haven't finalized the budget yet. But as you know, that is what we'll be using to raise funds. We have already done Giving Tuesday. We've put together a year-end appeal. We've already submitted grants. We have meetings set up with Allegheny as well as Quantum, the Knight Foundation, and we have been selected to participate in the Great Charity Challenge. So we're excited about that, and hopefully we will be on schedule for that. So this is sort of our timetable, just so you can see, starting October 1st. I've already reviewed our work we've done. November, as we approach into the second quarter, we're working on strategic development planning, capital campaign committee, getting members to be on that committee. We know that in terms of fundraising, our capital campaign committee is critical to our success. Cultivation and solicitation, we started with initially. We didn't wait for quarter three. We were asked to do that right from the beginning, and that's what we've been doing. So although we know in fundraising timing is everything, we have to be so careful not to ask too soon. But we're developing and again, setting up meetings with FPL, NextEra, Florida Crystals. We already have walking tours scheduled. Any of you want to join me anytime, let me know. But that seems to be what everybody wants. They want walking tours. So that's case for support, which you've seen. We also have 10 reasons support, which is the smaller document that's based on donors I've already met with who said, this is great, but just give us something quick and pretty we can look at and show our friends. So that is what this document is. And when you open the middle, it has 10 reasons to support and why it is so needed at this time. And here's our 10 reasons to support. I'm going to ask Mary Moran.
We decided to split this up so it wouldn't be so boring listening to one person for a long time. I didn't mean you. No. First of all, the number one reason is to address the poverty. You know, when we did the economic development study a few years back, we learned that we were at 17% poverty rate in West Palm Beach. It's definitely going to be higher as a result of COVID. We're higher than most of our comparison cities at that point. So this is something that we really have to address. And it was also sort of confounding because we had low unemployment rate, we had businesses growing at a very high rate. So why are we still talking about 17% of people living in poverty? And one of the reasons that I could think of was that they weren't prepared to do the jobs that were out there. And that's why we think that it's so important to have something like West Palm CAT to prepare people to do the jobs that are available. Manchester Bidwell has 50 years of history of doing amazing things. There are 11 other cities that have centers for arts and technology, and I think I heard there's probably another 5 in the pipeline. It provides mentors to students, particularly to make sure that they graduate. We're really working from a respectful point of view, and the programs provide a safe and nurturing environment for all involved. And the career training is so incredibly important. These are high demand jobs. We know culinary, and we know construction, just driving around the city. You know the need for construction workers. So these are the first 5, and PJ?
Yep. Thank you. Six, we know that $5 million has already been committed towards the $10 million project. This is a significant endorsement, as you know, and that is attracting great interest among other prospects and potential sponsorship. 7, investment. The project builds on the investments that have already been committed to, the Sunset Lounge, the Heart and Soul Park, the Styx Promenade, the West Palm Beach CAT. Most importantly to many of our potential grant funders, brings the educational component to the historic Northwest. And for example, for the Quantum Foundation, that's a very it's a key component to funding at that, is that the West Palm Beach Center for Art and Technology has an educational component. The partnerships with the existing arts programs and the industries maximize the impact, and they avoid duplication, and they ensure targeted job training, internships, and employment to meet demand. The key about the art and partnerships with this program, the whole idea about the art is engaging the part of the brain that helps us to work with these high school students on mentorship. So we know with other programs in the city, it's the mentorship. And so the arts allows for us to build a trust component. And through trusting, we're able to create relationship and create the mentorship. So that it's sort of a backdoor into mentorship. That's how Bill Strickland looks at it. Success, more than 95% of the students who attend the CATs nationwide graduate from high school. And that's a proven statistic and an outcome from Manchester Bidwell centers. And 82% of the career training graduates find jobs for a living wage. And last but not least, the center will be beautiful. It's a new center, it's light-filled. Big component to all the centers is water. Bill Strickland liked a water feature in the front, and we've talked to the architect and the students about it, and to Executive Director Rug, and we're hoping to have a water feature that'll be part of it. This is our final quote. Hope had a home there. It was a place where it was easy to imagine the extraordinary. Any questions?
Thank you for that presentation. Thank you, Mayor Moyo, for teeing that off and for the balance of your team. Okay, we'll go around the board because we are running short on time. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, this is very exciting to have something like this in our city, and love the opportunity to have something where we can all imagine the extraordinary. So I thought that was a great quote. One topic just that I realize we're short on time, but wanted to bring up to my colleagues on the dais, to you, Mayor, and I've talked with PJ and Jerry about this as well as Chris, is that in the industry of fundraising, it has a lack of diversity, specifically in major gifts and fundraising industry. And given the key components that you outlined today, I specifically noted preparing residents for jobs, mentoring, and career training. I would love for us to consider, and I don't know if it's possible, and I'm sure you all can discuss this if it's possible in details, but the opportunity for mentorship with this role. So if we're bringing on a contractor to help us with fundraising, what an amazing opportunity to impact that industry, to bring someone on who is from the neighborhood, who might not have the opportunity to meet with these level donors that you're doing and the type of work you're doing with the case for support. So I would just ask us to consider that in this process.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think it's an excellent opportunity. It is what I call a problemtunity, because it's a problem and an opportunity right there. It's a problemtunity. And it is definitely one that, as you said, the entire industry works on. I'm the diversity chair for the Association of Fundraising Professionals. This is a nationwide problem. Actually starts with the donors, as I'm sure you can imagine. So we all have a big job to do, and I think we could start with it right here. So I think as soon as we're ready, that we can do that. It's part of the reason I'm getting involved in my breakout group and the summit, is that I can continue to meet people and learn more about the culture. As Dr. Wynn said, I think that's critical. And your idea is critical to this program. It'll be critical to the success, just like finding the real executive director will be critical, who's the right member from the community. So we have a lot of work to do, and that's a great place to start.
Thank you.
Excellent suggestion, Commissioner. Any other board members? Commissioner Fox.
I'll be quick, but I just wanted to mention, you said you were at the summit this week, and thank you so much for this. I know I talked to you earlier and I had all my questions answered, but I did want to just mention that during that summit, when it came to the question of that task force working on workforce development, the number one most critical priority to focus on, we all were polled, and career development, was overwhelmingly selected as number one. So I just want to thank you so much for all you're doing, and wish you good luck. Thank you.
Quick question. What impact has the pandemic had on your ability to raise funds? Is it going to slow you down some? Talk to us about that.
It's a great question. I'm so happy this is not a Zoom meeting. Start with that. I spend most of my day, as I'm sure all of you do, on Zoom calls. And early on, the world of fundraising had to shift immediately into continuing what we do. Good old telephones, Zoom calls. The good news is all our donors and corporate sponsors, now more than ever, actually seem engaged. And if you talk to most people who are doing fundraising right now, even for events, sponsorship dollars are up. So although, yes, is it going to slow us down? We're all slowed down. But we have no choice but to continue to engage the way we are engaging. And as I mentioned, doing outdoor tours with masks, unless we have to stop doing that, I'm going to keep doing them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we're very excited about the way this is going and having PJ on board to work with us, someone who's so incredibly experienced in the fundraising area. I sat on briefly with the FAU students the other day, listening to their presentations. They, as part of their studio class, each of them worked on a design for the center, and they worked with us and they worked with the Salvation Army, and every design was an interesting one. So we'll see where that goes. And I also want to say special thanks to Glidden Spina for designing these architectural renderings that you've seen. That was part of their donation, and you can always count on Keith to be there to help us out. So if you don't have any other questions, I will close this. Say thank you all.
Thank you very much, and
Have a
we
great day.
look forward to hearing more. Stay safe.
Take care.
Okay, I don't have any mayor's matters. Anybody else have anything? Why don't we take a 2-minute break? Let's reconvene at 10:08, and then we'll head into the commission workshop. Okay?